And the next speaker it's often hard to introduce people, but the next speaker really does need no introduction, so I'm not going to introduce him.
That's Angelina Jolie. I always start my presentations with something completely pointless and useless. I can leave that up on the screen for a while I introduce what I'm talking about. And sometimes it wakes people up, sometimes it makes it more productive. So we'll just leave that there for a few minutes. Actually, what I'm going to talk about is some of the considerations that go into making great software. Oh, I get accused of sexism all the time. So we're going to do Brad Pitt, too, this time. And obviously, Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie are the kind of ultimate in movie stars, whatever that means. They're number one. And number two is a distant second, somebody like Ian Somerhalder, who you've never heard of. Number twos are never very good. There's sort of this huge gap between the number one and the number two position. And you can never explain it through rational criteria. You can never say Brad Pitt is a better actor than Ian Somerhalder or that he is better looking. It's not true. There's no rational way you can kind of explain how somehow the number one object gets into that slot. So there's this ineffable quality that number ones always have that gives them 80% market share. And the number two products, whatever they may be, are completely unheard of. I think that if Brad Pitt were the equivalent of the Apple iPod, Ian Somerhalder is the Brown Microsoft Zune. That's sort of the approximate equivalent in a different market space. Nobody wants one, and so when they make movies, Brad Pitt might make $25 million for a movie, and Ian Somerhalder gets a gift certificate to Supercuts. I gave a speech at the Business of Software conference in Boston about how to make a blue chip product, a number one product. Because in all kinds of marketplaces, a classic example is the iPod versus the Zune. You have some big number one hit that has 90% market share. And everybody else is doing just as good a job, but for some reason they have like 0% market share. So the iPod at the time I gave that speech had like literally 25 times the sales of the Microsoft Zune, and just nobody wanted a Zune. It was really unloved. Nobody had them. And this despite the fact that the Zune was, in many ways, a more functional product. I don't know if it was superior, but it had a bunch of features that the iPod just didn't have. You could get subscriptions to music services, so you could put as much music as you wanted on without paying for it. Just paying a monthly fee. And the iPod didn't have any kind of subscription service like that. You had to pay for every song. So it's a classic example of like if an alien were to land from space and look at the iPod versus the Zune, the alien might calculate that the Zune was a slightly better product. But if you ask people in the street, they would probably tell you that the iPod is a superior product, and they would probably laugh at the Zune. And it really became a subject of great ridicule. The first version wasn't that good. Maybe it was a little big and clunky, and it came out in brown, which was an interesting choice.
Do you know what this is?
An iPod, definitely an iPod.
Do you have an iPod yourself?
Yes.
What is that?
It's a little iPod. Looks like the new sort of new nano iPods.
And do you have an iPod yourself?
I do. I got a few iPods.
This is an iPod.
It's an iPod.
That's the iPod Nano.
Do you know what this is?
It's an iPod.
You own an iPod?
Yeah.
What do you like about the iPod?
It's light. It looks like it's convenient.
It's small. It's light.
I like the thinness and lightness.
Intuitive. You can pick it up really fast. It's obvious. Cover flow, playlist.
It's nice because you can watch videos and hold all of your music on it, which is really, really nice. You get to carry your music around.
Yeah, it's really easy to use, right? I mean, these are tiny.
And do you have an iPod yourself?
I do.
And
I got a few iPods.
What do you like about the iPod?
It makes it really easy to download, music, podcasts, all that sort of stuff.
What if I took away your iPod and I gave you another product? Do you know what this is?
It looks like an MP3 player.
Do you know what kind of MP3 player?
No. Well, it's like sideways.
You ever seen anybody holding it, anybody listening to it, or anything like that?
No.
Okay.
Can you tell me what this is?
Well, it's an MP3 player. It's similar to the iPod Nano first gen. 4 gigabytes. That's pretty much it, and I don't see a name brand on it.
Can you tell me what this is?
No.
No, I don't know what this is.
You've never seen this device ever?
No.
Not really. Not on site. Never saw it.
You haven't seen anyone with this product or
No,
any advertisement for it?
no. I have no idea what it is.
It's a Zune.
Okay.
What if I told you that was a Zune?
I've never heard of Zoom either. So, I wouldn't know what to say.
It seems kind of less organized, maybe? I don't know. I don't really know how to get to the songs.
It doesn't have the scrolling, the circular scrolling, which is important, I think. It's real easy. It's to just spin your fingers on a wheel or touch the screen.
You know, you have to go through it a bit more, you know, just to figure it out. There's too much animation going on just to like get to a song.
All right, I'm telling you right now, these graphics are irritating me. I don't want to see all this.
I don't know what to do with this thumb thing.
If you had to pick one at first glance, which one do you think you would choose?
I'd go for the iPod.
When I think of an MP3 player, I just want efficiency, and I just want something that's basically simple, because an MP3 player is made to be simple. I mean, you're on the go, you want something to listen to right there and then. You don't want to be like, okay, you don't want to stop on the street like, okay, what do I have to go through to get to this song?
I don't particularly care what it does because I've got an iPod and I've got an iPhone.
Obviously, your goal is to be number one because that's where you get the profit, and that's how you can charge 3 times as much for your MP3 player. So here's my list of requirements, and these are the things that I think are important for great software, and there's lots of other things, but these are the kind of things that you probably wouldn't think of. I mean, we've talked about usability, that's kind of important, obviously. We've talked about business stuff a lot today, and anybody that, you know, when you talk about software development, you may think about things like, you know, how clean is the code, how bug-free is it, how do you develop it, what kind of features does it have, how do you get the most features that the users want, and that's all great to get you to the number 2 slot. Or to win the Eurovision, but that's not going to get you to number 1. And for those things, you have to think about a completely different realm of things which are really outside of our comfort zone as software developers. It's not stuff that we've ever been trained to do. So let me just tell you what that is so you know at least what you can't do. Number 1, make people happy. I'll go into these in detail. Number 2, obsess over aesthetics. Aesthetics are really important. You can hire a graphic designer, but unless you actually know how to even evaluate what an artist produces, then you're going to do the Microsoft thing where they apparently hire graphic designers, but the stuff is still ugly. Observe the culture code, and we'll talk about that, what the culture code means. I won't go into it too much yet. How do you make people happy? I have a little story I like to tell to illustrate happiness, because I don't really know how to make people happy, and it's absurd to imply that I could come up with some set of rules. But from my Psych 101 class, I learned one thing that often works to often make many people more happy a lot of the time. Not always, but it's a good start. And to illustrate it, I want to tell a little story. You're walking, you wake up in the morning and you see something really cute going on. You get your digital camera out and you take a picture, and because you want to submit it to the Lolcats website, right, with the little swimming cat, and you're going to put a caption on it. So this is your goal, right? And you get to work, you've got the digital camera in hand. You sit down at your computer, and you're going to upload this to I Can Has Cheeseburger, a website where you submit funny pictures of cats doing funny things. So what's the first thing that happens when you get to work? Let's see. Oh, you got to log on. This is, by the way, a simulation that I've created in PowerPoint using Visual Basic for applications. I'm just going to show you how to hold on. Because the first thing you have to do in the morning is log on, so let's just do that. Okay. What was the password to my PowerPoint? Hold on. Try it again. Now this is not, remember, simulation, this is not the actual Microsoft dialog box. They would never use like red text on a gray background like this. It's hard to read. I think I have caps lock on. All right, sorry about that. I need to turn down the volume. Okay, so you get logged on, and remember your goal now is to upload a picture to I Can Has Cheeseburger, but your computer has a slightly different agenda. So give me a sec here. This won't take that long at all. I don't think I want to do the express install because sometimes that does stuff that you don't. Let's see what the options are. Okay, we got a security update for Microsoft.NET Framework. A security issue has been identified that could allow an attacker to. All right, let's just install it. Wait a minute. Sorry, I don't really need to read about this now. Install. Install. Okay. So while that's going on now, remember that you're doing something that you didn't really want to be doing. You're drinking your coffee. You're waiting for the site to connect to Microsoft Download the update. And remember, your goal was to upload a picture of a cat. And you go and you get some coffee. You put it down next to your computer right by the little, well, it's just on your left, to the left of your keyboard. And I'm sorry, the people that write installers just have a different concept of 100% than you and I might have. I think that's done. At this point, you really have to go to the bathroom, but you're going to finish it no matter what it takes. Where do I click? Oh, yeah, of course I have to reboot my computer, so I won't really go through with the whole rebooting, and luckily this is just a simulation. So you reboot your computer and it comes back up. Take the digital camera. Where are we? And you find one of those USB cables so that you can upload the picture from the camera into your computer so that you can upload it to Icon Has Cheeseburger. And you plug that in, and luckily we have plug and play now, so you don't need to install any software. Is this going to work? Okay, so the plug and play is wanting to install some stuff, and sometimes it discovers a piece of Windows that wasn't originally installed, which is necessary to make the camera work. In this case, it's the Twain.dll. I happen to know that. So you're looking for the Windows CD-ROM, and of course you have Windows XP Home Edition CD-ROM. And you have a Windows XP Pro, but it's like the OEM edition, and you need the Enterprise edition. So it's not happy with your choice of CD-ROMs. And actually, I don't even think computers come with CD-ROMs anymore. I don't know where anybody would get a Windows CD-ROM. So eventually, and of course you're now a little bit really having to go to the bathroom, you go down the hall, try to find the system administrator. He's got an MSDN or a TechNet subscription. And he can download an ISO of the Windows CD-ROM that you need, and then he's got to find some kind of an ISO to CD burner type shareware utility, because that's not built into anything. Find a blank CD, he makes it for you, you take it down the hallway, you push the little button to eject the CD-ROM drive so that you can put in the Windows software so that you can proceed with what you wanted to do. And the CD slot drive thingy comes out and knocks your coffee into your lap. Remember the coffee? So you leap up in pain, and accidentally, in jumping up, knock the camera onto the floor, and it unplugs the USB cable that you just plugged in 15 minutes ago. And it says, you're not really supposed to just remove hardware. Your operating system wants to know when you remove hardware. It says, do not remove things without telling Microsoft Windows first. Tell us first, and then there's something small there, which I won't read out loud, because there might be children in the audience, and I don't want to fuck with their heads. And so it's no surprise that, as editorialist Vicky Helmholtz wrote in The Onion, people think their computers hate them. My computer totally hates me, she writes. About a month ago, I got a new computer here at the reception desk at the dentist's office, and boy, does that thing have it in for me. That is really how people feel. They kind of anthropomorphize their computers. They really feel like their computer is trying to drive them crazy. This is a point-counterpoint. It's completely unfair of me to only show one side of the issue. There's the computer's opinion. There is one thing that I have discovered about happiness, and this comes from the principle of unhappiness, actually, the principle of learned helplessness. And this will give you one formula for hopefully making people happy with your software. Let me tell you about the principle of learned helplessness. A professor at the University of Pennsylvania, Martin Seligman, wrote this book, Learned Helplessness, because he had observed that a common problem among people with depression, not all forms of depression, but there was a form of depression that became sort of a self-fulfilling vicious circle. Here's how it worked. Something really, really bad happens to you. Like you lose a job or a loved one dies, and this is genuinely a bad thing, and you are unhappy. And that's just normal helplessness or normal unhappiness. And what happens is you start to feel out of control of the world. You start to feel what the psychologists call a lack of agency. Agency is the ability to control and affect the world around you. So you feel a lack of agency and inability to control things. And your inability to control things makes you not try to control things. Like you stop going into work or you don't try to get another job because you sort of feel like things are going to happen whether or not you make an effort. And your lack of effort in turn leads to worse things actually genuinely happening to you. And you go into this mode of increasing sort of despair of feeling a lack of agency, which leads to unhappiness, which is sort of a form of what he calls learned helplessness. You learn to feel helplessness. The idea of learned helplessness suggests a cure. And the cure that Martin Seligman has tried, and with some success, is to give patients a form of activity that they can do in which they can exert agency on the world around them. People who are feeling helpless often benefit from doing activities in which they have control over something successfully, control over the world around them. So it might just be something very simple like folding napkins, just some kind of task that they can accomplish successfully. And this leads to a feeling of, okay, I can accomplish that, which in turn creates a virtuous cycle of being able to do more and more things and being able to influence your life in more and more ways and basically becoming happy through learning that you're not completely helpless in the world and that you do have some agency, you do have some control over things around you. And so the way I apply this particular psychological principle to making people happy with software products is the principle that putting your users in charge in some way, giving them control over the user interface, over your application, letting them make the decisions, makes them happier. And putting them in control happens at the largest level, like letting them build anything with your 3D graphic design software. But it even happens in the tiniest, smallest things. The idea of giving people a sense of agency, a sense that what they're doing is actually influencing the world, can increase their happiness. So here's an example from a website, Abercrombie & Fitch checkout page. This is something that you see all the time. If you buy the clothes from Abercrombie & Fitch, you get a girlfriend. It's awesome. That's why that picture is there on the checkout page. But I don't want you to look at that. That's just sort of neither here nor there. Look in the top right-hand corner. We've got one of these tab thingies, shopping bag, the billing and the shipping, the payment method. 1, 2, 3, 4. It's like a wizard that drags you through the steps in order. 1, 2, 3, 4. And for some reason, this is appealing to developers because it's this concept that, don't worry, it's just 4 steps. I'm going to take you through them by the hand. And it's a very small thing. But look what Amazon does. They just throw up a page with everything on it. And you can do things in any order that you want. You can change the shipping address, you can choose the shipping method, you can place the order, you can change the billing address, the payment method there. There's all kinds of stuff on here, and you're in charge. And when you're ready to place the order, you place the order. And this sort of, believe it or not, places the burden on the user to kind of make a decision about how they want to walk through the checkout process, and it puts the user in control and makes them happier. It happens in the smallest things. Let's see if this is the right slide. You can give people just the smallest little bits of positive feedback. You know those remote controls that you get? You just bought a $6,000 69-inch plasma screen TV that's gigantic, and it's got like 48 billion megapixels. And it cost a fortune, and it came in a crane, and they installed it in your living room, and it comes with like a little remote control that's made out of plastic, and it comes from China, and it costs about 19 cents to make. And it's got these little rubbery buttons, and they don't really work that well. They don't click. You don't feel the click. And even when you press the button, it like puts on like a little infrared light, and the infrared light may or may not actually reach the television. And it's frustrating, right? Because you're on channel 7, right? And you want to be on channel 10. So you have to click channel up 3 times. So you go 1, 2, 3, and the 3rd time nothing happens. Because I don't know why, infrared light is out of control, and so you hit it harder. And that wasn't really the problem. The problem was maybe the plasma is reflecting off of the infrared or something like that, and you're banging and banging harder and harder on this crappy little plastic remote control, and maybe the battery pops out. But the problem was not that you weren't hitting the button hard enough. The problem is, I don't know, maybe some like orange juice got stuck in there or something, and how do I make this advance? Sometimes it just goes by itself, and the remote control is just advancing the slides for you, and you're not in control anymore. You don't have a feeling of control, and your $6,000 television purchase makes you angry because of the crappy, shoddy quality of the little rubber button that doesn't have a micro switch in it because they were cheap, so you don't have feedback. You don't even know that you clicked the button, and then nothing happens because it's using infrared, which is horribly unreliable. So in the smallest things, the click of a remote control, you can be made happy or unhappy, and you've all felt it, right? Based on the smallest amount of are you in control of what channel your $6,000 television is showing you or not. Let me give a good example from Abercrombie's site. Abercrombie, this is, you're buying the underwear. You can change the color right there. One of the things that's going on here is Abercrombie uses Ajax extensively. You've probably all seen this on a lot of sites now. But when you go to add something to the bag, you get instant feedback. Everywhere in the site that you can click on something, wherever they made it, wherever they could, they made it something that had already been downloaded or some code that was already there in JavaScript. Meaning there was never, they didn't even have that half second of latency while it went to the server to get the picture of the black underwear. It was already there. And as you click through this thing, as you add things to the cart, it's pure JavaScript. The latency is reduced from whatever the web single HTTP request would have cost down to zero, absolutely zero. And they put a lot of effort into this, and that makes you feel like you're in control, and it feels like a very crisp, fast website, and it just makes you happier. The iPod has a little touch wheel on it, and it's a smooth, touchy thing, and it's hard to feel whether or not you're pushing hard enough and whether or not what you're doing has any effect. So the designers of iPod added a little clicky sound. They put a little tiny speaker behind the click wheel so that as you turn it, there's a little clicking sound, and the clicking sound comes from the wheel itself. It's not being played to you through the headphones, because you wouldn't really notice. I mean, if you hear it in the headphones, you won't know that it's coming from the wheel. They play a little clicky sound out of the wheel, so it feels like instead of just touching this thing, you're actually rotating something and it's going click, 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 and you have that positive feedback that something is happening, and that sense of you, the user, are in control of your environment. And there's all kinds of ways, and this makes people happy. The feeling that they are in control directly, Seligman really called it, directly makes you feel a little bit happier about that product and a little bit more cheerful about using the product. And when you're designing user interfaces, when you're designing software, you have a million ways to put people in control, give them immediate, quick feedback, even bogus feedback. Just give them like little loud clicks as they move up and down through the menu just to make them feel kind of that sense of being in control. A great example in user interfaces was when we did the big shift from the first generation of like DOS software to the second generation of GUI software. We switched from a model where you might get a menu and the program just sort of walked you through step by step saying, now do this, now do that, now do this. And the new model was you're looking at a blank page and you have a menu. You get to choose from the menu. And that's a classic example, again, of putting the user in control, letting them do whatever they want in whatever particular order. And that sense of control, actually, we have a sort of step backwards, which is the wizard dialogue, which I'm generally not a big fan of. And the wizard basically says, I need 6 pieces of information from you. And because I am smarter than you and you're not in control, I'm going to request those pieces of information 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in that particular order as you go through the wizard. And this kind of interface is kind of irritating because you may not have the information in order. You may want to see what information you're going to need all at once. And so this kind of a better design which puts the user more in control, where you show the user the information you have right now, you show them what pieces of information are missing, and let the user fill in that information in a different order and different sequence as they choose to. And it's a little simple thing, but it's an example of giving the user more sense of control over what they're going to do, what order they're going to do it in, that in the end is going to eliminate sources of frustration and it's going to make them happier. Aesthetics are really important. Obviously, the MacBook Air, I'm trying to remember why this is even here. The MacBook Air is a great example of the kind of extremes you can go to on aesthetics. Obviously, everybody thinks that this is a very beautiful computer compared to, you know, there's a picture of the outside of it. Compared to the equivalent, Lenovo has this new computer called an X300, which is about the same weight, roughly the same size. Here's what I wanted to show you, the back of these damn things. A lot of people carry around their laptops and they look at the back and they see it. And look, when you look at the bottom of a Mac, it's relatively clean. There's nothing there that doesn't absolutely positively need to be there. The same cannot be said of any other product. There are two different kinds of Chinese on here. There are notices from every country in the world, lots of little screws and buttons and gaps, and I don't know what this thing is. I think that's for a docking station. There's stickers everywhere. Some of this is Microsoft's fault, some of it isn't. Some of these are like, literally, this one is taped on with cellophane tape. I mean, good God. Nobody cared what was going on here. This was just sort of a community chest where people dumped things because nobody really cared about the aesthetics there. And, and that's why these MacBooks cost like 18 times as much as they should because of that attention to detail in the aesthetics. Notice that everything is the smallest possible font. On the classic MacBooks, not the Air, where there's actually a whole bunch of plugs you can plug things into, they have been organized in order by size. There's a real obsession there with aesthetics. Obviously, the iPhone is the same kind of thing. It's totally sleek, totally smooth. It looks like if you swallowed it, it would like go right down without hitting anything on the way because it's so totally polished and smooth. Doesn't work very well. Look at all these clones that have come out. Good God. This is actually what LG thinks is an iPhone clone. They can't even get those things straight, those icons, and they're all things. One of them, Vcast Videos, My Music, VZ Navigator. There's three things where they're trying to sell you stuff of the 9 icons that they put on the front page of that horrible screen. And if you go to the Verizon website or the Sprint website or anybody but AT&T, you'll find a whole selection of phones that look like an iPhone in the sense that they have a large screen on the front, but in no other way do they share the aesthetics. And these things are all going to be number 2 products, not number 1 products. Aesthetics is a huge thing. The whole difference between Dunkin' Donuts and Starbucks is the color scheme, right? Is it like the pink and the yellow, looks like fast food, or is it this new modern kind of wood, and it's not wood, I mean it's wood color. And there's sort of a purplish brown that they like to use, and they're big fans of teal. This is what we developers, unfortunately, do not care that much about aesthetics. And so we think of this as the aesthetics as being the lipstick of our applications. It's something we can slap on afterwards. The guts is like all that stuff under the surface. By the way, this is the 3rd time this iceberg has shown up in 2 days. If you guys don't know why that is, there's a command in PowerPoint called insert iceberg. And we use it all the time. But truly, developers are not good at aesthetics. And in fact, there's a whole category. There's something really strange. Like, why is Apple, okay, so you hire aesthetic people. You hire graphic designers or artists or something like that. But that doesn't even work if you don't have taste yourself. There is something very strange about all the graphic design that comes out of Microsoft. It just feels like utterly tone deaf. It just feels like not cool. Like, that is not something I want to see or look at, or it's just never going to take off. And this is a fashion industry. This is really hard for us. Software developers, we're not painters, so we can't do like the beautiful paintings like Jean-Michel Basquiat, who's a modern art legend. This painting sold for $3 million recently. That's his self-portrait. It's probably worth about double that now. But that's really good, and we have no idea how to do beautiful art because we're software developers. For us, it's just a bunch of pixels. Rothko is even more famous. That is his painting White Center. It sold for $72 million. By the way, that's a woman looking at the painting. That's not the whole painting. That's the painting is just the part in the middle with the, and it's and people say I could have done that. My 5-year-old could have done that, but of course you didn't. Software developers try to punt on aesthetic design, which you really can't do, and you can't leave it until the last minute. The classic way of punting is skins. I know, we'll make the same user interface. Here's Opera. We'll make some UI design, and we'll use like these really crappy little, we'll just put some whatever kind of icons up there, and we'll leave it to the ecology or economy or whatever. We'll leave it to the other people to come up with all these skins, which you can trade in or trade out and get different looks and feels going on there. And that is something that you can do, but the truth is that the aesthetics really comes from not just you can't just rearrange the location of the different plugs on the side of your laptop. You're going to have to relay out the entire circuit board so that it works that way. So there's stuff that a skin just does not solve. There's a lot of stuff that a skin just does not solve that has to do with aesthetics. And so if your problem with the Opera browser was that there was too much space, screen real estate being used for Chrome, and it wasn't elegant like the new Google browser, if you've seen it. I wonder if I should risk running it here. It's really clean, and it leaves a lot of space for the app and not very much space for the chrome up top. It doesn't even have a menu bar. And if you wanted to do that, if that was your artistic sensibility, a skin is not going to let you do that, because a skin is just a skin, and it's just the outer layer of the epidermis. So you really have to think about aesthetics at a higher level. Let me go back to modernist architecture for a second, because there's another mistake, I think, besides the skins mistake that developers tend to make, which is thinking that in some way the functionality can make up, that by revealing the functionality of the app in the simplest possible way, you're doing something which is aesthetic. And they always point to modernist architecture. Who are the modernist architects? The modernist architects, it's a movement that started in the 1930s in Germany, and the concept was that whenever you decorate a building, any kind of decoration is decadent. There is decadence or corruption involved in decoration, because you're doing something that is not necessary for the functioning of the thing, and therefore it's corrupt and it's wasteful and decadent. It's just, they didn't like this stuff at all. And so what they did, here's a typical apartment building from Paris. It's called a Haussmann apartment building after the designer, and you see them all over the place in Paris. There's a lot of fake columns here that aren't holding anything up. There's little balconies here that you can't go out on. And there's all kinds of decorative things here that aren't really doing what they appear to be doing. They're just there for decoration purposes, to make it look like a big old wedding cake. And this was infuriating to the modernist architects. And they said, we have to strip away all that crap. We would call it chrome, drop shadows, et cetera. We have to strip away all that stuff and just eliminate all ornament, they said. And instead of building buildings like that, you build these nice new modern buildings. So here's an apartment building from the 1930s in Tel Aviv, which is home to an awful lot of international Bauhaus modernist architecture, where everything you don't need has been cleaned off and completely removed. In fact, the original modernists actually even said that having a sloped roof on a building was decoration. They wanted to have flat roofs, because just that slope there, nothing else, was this decadent form of decoration. Now what happened, actually interesting, is they built a building with a flat roof in Finland, and it snowed, and the snow piled up on the roof because it couldn't go anywhere, and the entire building collapsed. And so they said, okay, you can have one slope for functionality, but two is decadent decoration. This is what we call a joke in the world of architecture. So this is what the programmers obviously want to do. They want to strip away all the artifice and just go back to the Unix command line prompt where you can type ls. And they want to basically remove all that artificial decoration, all that ornamentation, all that aesthetic stuff. And they somehow feel like, if we could do it in architecture, if that's the right thing to do in architecture, why can't we get away with this in code? And the truth is that people just don't want that anymore. They won't buy it. We're not at that point yet. So we're still building the equivalent of decadent artifices in our software. We have, just like the apartment building that had pillars that aren't holding anything up, we've got fake steel that isn't really steel. We've got little jelly beans that look like what they actually aren't. We've got drop shadows as if there was actually a light source going through the screen. And it feels decadent to developers, but it doesn't matter, because it still sells, because people still really care about aesthetics. Aesthetics are extremely important. The websites, the designs, the products that care about aesthetics the most are going to be the ones that have the mass followings of millions and millions of people. How'd that get in there? Sorry. Clotaire Appé gives a great example of the culture code in the design of sport utility vehicles in the United States. He was consulted by at least two of the big three automakers here for how to design sport utility vehicles that would make people feel safe. The car companies had a big problem. Sport utility vehicles are not actually very safe. They have a tendency to roll over in accidents because they're so high, and they're just big and heavy. And so when they do get into accidents, it's much harder to brake. You have less control over them. And because they are legally trucks, they don't have to obey all the same exact laws that passenger cars might have to. So Clotaire Appé suggested to the car makers a few things. One, everything should be round and soft, like the dashboard, the front of the car, everything you see in an SUV had to be kind of rounded and soft. And he thought that cup holders, having a cup holder there was very, very important. And that also the feeling of being up high, sitting up in a seat above, looking down on things, So this combination of being up high, of having your warm drink, and everything around you being warm and soft, had this cultural reference back to being a baby sitting on your mother's lap. And this particular concept seems utterly bizarre, but you can see how the idea of being on your mother's lap might evoke a sense of safety, even though it's not doing so explicitly. It's doing so implicitly through a culture code, through this anthropological sense of what, round, soft things are. All right, so this sounds absolutely completely absurd, but this is actually what they did. They made everything round, they made all the corners soft, they made everything look pillowy. They put in a lot of cup holders so that you can drink your warm, milky beverage from Starbucks. and make you feel safe in the SUVs. Microsoft sort of copied them when they went from Windows 2000 to Windows XP. We noticed that they rounded the corners there. See what they did? Look at the title bar. They rounded the corners. They made them look kind of puffy and soft. So you feel safer, I think, in Windows XP. By design. All right. Let's talk more about how the culture code applies. The concept of culture code, I'm not trying to make fun of a French person here. Well, maybe I am. The concept of a culture code is that there's these things like cup holders that you do associate with safety somehow. You may not be aware of it. But there is a culture to everything that we do, and you ignore it at your own peril. So if I just put up a slide with the word enterprise, I won't tell you anything about that. I just said enterprise. Everybody in this room, that means something. Enterprise, software. What is an enterprise? Star Trek. Rental cars. No, this is enterprise. We'll get there. Here's an enterprise, obviously. Okay, this is where an enterprise computer. That's the other enterprise. But that word enterprise has cultural connotations for us in software development. There's smiling, happy people looking very serious and thinking. These are obviously enterprise people. This is where they work. Yeah, look, you can put a little happy yellow duck or something on top of your monitor. It's not really that bad. Okay, and similarly, we have this word Web 2.0. Nobody knows what it means. It doesn't mean anything. I refuse to use it. Here I am using it. But what does it mean? We're not really sure, but these are all obviously Web 2.0 companies. So that's a start, right? We would all agree that the colorful, happy, splashy, blue and green are the colors. Oh, this is where you work. That's my lolcats caption for that. Here's another place they work. This is Jason Calacanis' company, Mahalo. Big old table with big monitors, really nice chairs, and no floor. Or ceiling. Or walls, or doors. You go to parties and get drunk with these people. You get on Business Week, making $60 million. All right. That's the Web 2.0 poster boy. Oh, I don't even want to look at that. Oh, my God. Sorry, I just have to go back to this picture for a few minutes just to get Scobble out of my head. Okay, so let's go in some other areas. Ruby, I did a talk at RailsConf to talk to some Ruby developers a little bit, and I was thinking about what's the culture code that you might associate with things like Ruby. So let's, if you think about words, does anybody remember this? This is this book by Y the Lucky Stiff about Ruby, and it was a cartoon. The book was actually written as a cartoon, in sort of a cartoon form. It's on the web. Look for _Y, WHY. It's sort of insane because it's just an impossible programming tutorial to follow, but the cartoons are really funny. And that's how everybody learned Ruby. That's him. There's Y giving a speech in which he said, "You may now resume all hats and mustaches." He asked the women to remove their hats and the men to remove their hats and the women to remove their... No, wait a minute. I might have that backwards. He's obviously an insane person, but he's sort of created a culture for Ruby single-handedly. That people like. Here's his website, Y the Lucky Stiff. Here's some more Ruby culture. It came from the Ruby on Rails developer David Heinemeier Hansen. He says, "That continues to be our story, one of beauty, happiness, and motivation, taking pride and pleasure." This seems a little bit rhetorical, or a little bit highfalutin. I'm just going to pick a few words from here. that he just sort of took these words and then put them in a paragraph somehow and said, this is what I think of when I think of Ruby. It doesn't make any sense. Come on, it's a programming language. So let me move those up there for a minute. There's something else that Y said about Ruby. Similar words, right? Love, passion, pleasure. Those words keep coming up. How could this apply to a programming language? Python is almost exactly the same language. And it doesn't have these words associated with it because it doesn't belong in that part of the culture code. So I just put the opposite words there. When you buy an Apple iPod, you open the box and it says, designed by Apple in California. And think about the culture code of design, Apple, California. Apple might make you think of apple trees in California. It might make you think of the revolutionary company Apple. It might make you think of how much money Forrest Gump made off of his stock in the Apple Computer Corporation. The design, the California thinks the future, the Beach Boys, the beach. It's cool design. Who cares where they made that damn thing? Even though the whole purpose of the sentence is to distract you from the fact that iPods are made in China. Now, Microsoft had such Apple envy when they made the Zune. They tried to copy every little piece of it. And instead of writing design from Apple in California, because they didn't have any of that kind of stuff, they actually put the words hello from Seattle on the Zune music player. What's the culture code of Seattle? Well, this is a little bit different. Seattle actually means rain, dreary, it's kind of dark. It's Microsoft. It's not a place, I don't know, it's not Apple Fields. It's not the orchards of California. It's not fruit. It's not sunlight. It's none of those things. Unless you happen to be interested in grunge music, which came from Seattle, there's really no musical form or art form that is uniquely identified with Seattle. So the cultural association of Seattle is just wrong. It's just not as good as the cultural associations of California to the music player market. And hello from Seattle is kind of weird because the word hello was the original advertising used for the Macintosh. For years and years and years, every time Apple showed a picture of a Macintosh, it had the word hello written in cursive on the screen. And so, these are not necessarily true associations that everybody have, but it's a way of, you have to have a way of looking at something as simple as a little sentence on the box and saying, what cultural associations would this have? If you're going to say hello from Seattle or designed by Apple in California, you have to think about what cultural touchstones are you actually touching. And you have to think about what associations will these things have in people's minds, and are they going to improve your brand, make people love your brand, or are they detracting from your brand in some way? And specifically in the Microsoft case, where you can't look at that without thinking about how they're trying to copy Apple. And the idea of Microsoft copying Apple is actually a pretty strong element of our culture. And so they're almost, by doing this, they're almost shaming themselves. They're almost making themselves look like, they're reinforcing the cultural stereotype that the best thing that Microsoft can do is copy from Apple, which isn't really helping their position at all. So I'm not saying that there's a particular prescription for how you should handle these things. I'm just saying that you need to concentrate on, you have to look at these things, you have to evaluate them in terms of culture, in terms of how people think, in terms of what their associations will be with these things before you try to use them, because this is the kind of stuff that you have to get right to make a product that's beloved, that's a #1 product, and not a product that's either ridiculed or tolerated, or #2, sort of a secondary product. And I can sum it up in one word, which is misattribution. Let me see if I can explain what this word means. It's a technical term from psychology again, which you probably haven't heard. It comes up only in the psychology literature. Misattribution is when something happens to you. You have some kind of experience, and you have two experiences at the same time, and you think that one is causing the other, sort of. Or let's say you're having two experiences. One of them is happening at the intellectual level, and the other is happening at the physical level. Something's happening to your body, and you're attributing the body thing to the intellectual thing that happened. So I'll give you a few examples of this. Let's say, for example, you go to a movie, and you get the supersized Coke, right? They give you the gigantic cup of Coke that's huge, and the ultra large bucket of, like trash can sized bucket of popcorn. And you sit down and you eat the popcorn, you drink the Coke, and you eat the popcorn, and you drink the Coke. And the movie goes on and on and on and on. And about 10 minutes before the end of the movie, one of two things is going to happen. Either, well, here's one possibility. One possibility is they're getting really excited by all this Coke because it's got caffeine in it. You're starting to get a little bit peppy, you're cheerful and you're excited. When you get out of the movie, your friends say to you, hey, what'd you think of the movie? And you say, wow, that was really awesome. That was like the greatest movie I've ever seen in my life. It was just really good. And that's a classic example of you're responding to the caffeine in the Coke, not to the movie. Because the other thing that could happen, for example, is that you're jammed in between two fat guys in the back row and you can't go to the bathroom. And you really are drinking a lot of Coke and you really have to go. Somebody gets up and gives some long soliloquy on screen and just goes on and on and on. And your friends say, what did you think about the movie? And you say, oh, I thought it would never end. It was just endless. It just went on and on and on. Once again, a reaction to your bladder, that you're attributing to whether or not you like the movie. And you probably think I'm crazy, but they regularly have, it's an easily reproducible experiment, is to ask people in a movie theater on the right side of the room and on the left side of the room how much they like the movie. The people on the right side of the room like it 10% more. I don't know why. It's easily reproducible. And I don't even know what the theory is behind there. It has to be something physical, right? Because it's just the side of the room. It can't have anything to do with whether the movie was good or bad. But it's a classic example of misattribution. And so all these things that I've been talking about making the user feel like they're in control, giving them an aesthetically pleasing experience, and observing the culture code are all things that will cause somebody, maybe, if you're lucky, to like your product because of something simpler that's going on, that they are attributing to the quality of your product somehow. They're misattributing it. There's another way you can use this, actually. It's generally recommended that if you're going out on a first date, instead of going to a bar and drinking alcohol or giving your date alcohol, which is a depressant, you go to a coffee shop. And the coffee literally, and this is another psychological study that they do, the coffee literally just increases your heart rate. It just makes your heart beat faster. That's all there is to it. And so if you're lucky, then your date will say to themselves, cute guy, heart beating faster, I must be in love. Right? That's classic misattribution, and that's usually what they mean in psychology. And that's it's really I'm not talking about trying to trick anybody. I'm talking about making people like your product at the #1 level and not the #2 level. And sometimes you have to do things that appear not to be so rational. Programmers generally think that their job is to provide the functionality. And if there's going to be a pretty user interface, some real aesthetic thing, that's just like a skin, skin or like lipstick that's going to be put on top of that thing afterwards. And you can take this approach. This is the formula for a #2 product. But the #1 products really have to have a higher level of aesthetics to appeal to the tastemakers and to really make people love them. That level of aesthetics does not necessarily mean a lot of decoration. It may just mean looking like the thing you want it to look. You might choose to have a very industrial look to convey a sense of robustness, or you may want a more decorative look to convey something else. But whatever those aesthetic decisions are, those are really, really important to make in designing your products. So I don't know, maybe you're putting on a conference or you're doing a demo, and you could sit sternly and read from academic papers. Or you could show pictures of Angelina Jolie. You could tell jokes. You could put on music. You could have a DJ. Could we cue up some music over there, actually? And there you are. If you're lucky, then people will leave the conference at the very end thinking, I don't know why, but that was the best conference I've ever been to in my life. Thank you very much.
Now we sell computers. It sucks, but we're cool. We sold you off computers. We are warriors in a digital realm, and we will save the world with just ourselves. We are warriors in a digital realm, and we will save the world with just ourselves.
It originated from the Toyota Motor Corporation and was used to, I don't know. Why did you just look at me like that? I thought you looked at me like you're bullshitting, making this up. Okay.
I will look directly at the camera the entire time.
We are marching forward, better versions
think I always knew that I wanted to start a Cup-Nally.
That's a good answer.
No, that wasn't me. This morning I woke up and... No, I didn't.
If you wanna get to Silicon Valley, baby, why don't you ride on my mind? If you wanna rule the Silicon Valley, baby, why don't you ride on my mind? Why don't you ride on my mind? Why don't you ride on my mind? 'Cause we are ready, so very ready for anything that you've got to say. And we are ready, so very ready for all the hate that you've got to spare. And we are ready, so very ready for anything that you've got to say. And we are ready, so very ready.
Okay, the reason he's called Flesh Cam is because he likes to show off his chest. He thinks he's in the 1970s or something, and then he's Burt Reynolds or so forth. He doesn't realise that it's completely out of fashion, and this is 2009. But he still insists and walks around the office with little hairs creeping out the top of his t-shirt, thinking he's the man. So that's what I have for you today.
We are warriors in the digital realm, and we will save the world with just ourselves.